Who here has ever climbed a tree? Yeah? Who here still climbs trees? Every once in a while. With my nieces and nephew, we got to teach them how to climb trees. But when I was growing up, parents, you know this, right? I got to figure out what is safe for my kids, where my kids are safe to be, right? So when we were kids, we had to ask for permission if we went into people's houses, or if we wanted to go somewhere that was further away from home. So if we were in the backyards, we were fine. We grew up in a cul-de-sac. And we went into people's houses. So we had a lot of fun in the cul-de-sac, running around, going into places' houses. But Mom always wanted to know where we were. Well, there was a really awesome willow tree that was about block and a half away. It's kind of more in a busy part of the area. And so we had to ask for permission to go there. And going there, we had all sorts of fun. We would climb the trees. We would use our imagination for different things, for different places in the trees. It was, a sizable tree, like really, really big. Had to help each other kind of up it. Anyways, every time I go home, and especially every time I went to Detroit, I would always laugh to myself and go, I remember when I had to ask for permission to go here. To go here, I had to ask. And now I'm driving 10 hours to Detroit. And I don't have to ask. In fact, I have to do it. But I don't have to be afraid. Mom still knows where I am. Dad still knows where I am. And then we keep in contact. My parents, I don't know about your parents, my parents are ones that text us when you get home. Okay? Why? But okay. I just want to make sure you made it home. Today, Jesus is telling us to fear no one. And he's telling us to speak what we hear, what he says to us in the darkness, speak in the light. Well, what's darkness? Darkness can be suffering, but love. Love is darkness. It's amazing how much we get spoken to in the evening, in the night, when we're by ourselves. When we go to that inner room and close the door and pray to the Lord, and we just hear this whisper, you're loved. You're loved. I love you. And that darkness is suffering. My God, why have you forsaken me? But it's also love. And to speak it in the light, to say, this is what happened in the dark. Guess what's happening in my life? What you hear whispered, proclaim on the housetops. How often it is that words of affection are whispered, not yelled at the top of their lungs. It's whispered. So what is Jesus telling us? Whisper in prayer. The whisper of the cave of God's voice. And Isaiah went hiding. Proclaim that radical whisper on the housetop. And he says, do not be afraid of those who can kill the body, but those who can kill the soul, which is God himself. To be more afraid of God than of humans. And that real sense of, not of fear as in tangibly like fearful, but more of an awe, a holy awe of God's goodness towards us. Because how good is he towards us? 2 sparrows are worth 1 small coin. Yet not one of them falls to the ground, and the Father doesn't know it. Not one butterfly lands anywhere without the Father's knowing it. Not one blade of grass grows without the Father knowing it. Even the hairs of your head are counted. Who here actually could attempt to count the hairs on their head? Anyone? No? Okay. That was a bald joke, by the way. Who can count them? Can't. And yet the Lord keeps in existence our very selves. How do we view the world? What's our lens for viewing the world? Are we a rock so many planets away from the sun that happens to have some water on it and happens to have some light on it? Is the world a place where there's political parties that are always at war with each other, always arguing? Is it states set up, nations set up, where humanity is just here? Or do we see it through the eyes of faith? God created all that is and sustains me. Because that's what Jesus gets into here at the very end here. Everyone who acknowledges me before others, I will acknowledge before my heavenly Father. Who acknowledges God before others? The ones that are in love with Him. The ones that know Him, that have heard these words in the darkness, that have heard these whispers in the darkness, that know these, and uses them to comfort one another, to heal one another, to journey with one another closer to God. And Jesus is going to acknowledge us before the Heavenly Father. But whoever denies me before others, I will deny before my Heavenly Father. Isn't that like a, ugh? Well, what did Jesus start this conversation off as? Fear no one. Fear no one. What prevents us from acknowledging the Father before others? It's fear. However else you want to say it, it's fear. Oh, they're probably not going to like me. Well, it might be a difficult conversation. I might not know the words to say. Fear. Fear of the unknown. The business that brings in the most revenue is based in fear. Who here has insurance? Insurance is based in the unknown. It makes the most money. Yet Jesus is telling us to fear no one. There's a Chilean nun, Carmelite nun. And she goes in so far to the Lord. She dies at the age of 19, and she writes this. I will finish my letter by saying this. Let yourself be invaded by God. Live in Him through faith. Hand yourself over to Him. He won't fail to take possession of your whole being. He is love, and we exist only because of His infinite goodness. Let's breathe in and that way of divine milieu in each in which we live. God is in us. Let us adore Him with faith. Everything changes when we look at this divine Son. May faith be the lens that reveals to you your Creator. A soul that has faith has everything because it has God. Sufferings are transformed by faith. Is faith the lens we see the world? And lastly, wrap it up. That tree is no longer there. I drove home the other day. The tree is completely gone. It'd been there forever. It's gone. Yet the security and the sense of having my parents know where I am isn't. And walking with the Lord, it's been moved on to the Lord, being able to walk with me and journey with me. And He's not going away for any of us. God's not going away. God gave us His church, His sacraments, the Eucharist, Himself, to be with us. What's the lens in which we see the world? And can our faith actually be that lens? Can we see the world in the eyes of faith? Know that we're worth more than any sparrow. Knowing that the Lord is whispering to us the words of love, of comfort, of journeying, of walking. The Lord tells us to fear no one. Let us ask for that grace to fear no one. Because when we fear no one, we have faith in God, and we're worried about God's view of us. Let's share that faith with one another.